diffusion, and we're going to use three examples. One is going to be the diffusion of the Islamic religion. Two is going to be an example of how paper diffused across the world. And three, a discussion that may be close, near and dear to all of us, blue jeans. So let's start off with the cultural diffusion of Islam. There were multiple ways that Islam diffused throughout the world. One of them was through military successes. You take a look here. Islam started in the Arabian Peninsula, and through a variety of military ventures, they expanded into northern Egypt to complete their domination of the Arabian Peninsula, and then into Persia and over into modern-day Afghanistan. By the end of the 7th century, middle part of the 8th century, they had expanded all the way over into almost India to the east, over to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal to the far west, and completed their domination of northern Africa. What this does is, through this Islamic kingdom, these Muslim kingdom that they had taken over, they expanded and spread their religion that way. So militarily, you can see how the Islamic religion, through the advancement of this empire, expanded out through these regions. It was not just militarily, but also trade. There was also a significant amount of trade that helped expand the Muslim faith, the Islamic religion. We can take a look from this chart, and it's a little blurry, and I apologize about that, but this gives us a good understanding of how the trade routes in the Indian Ocean from about late 4th century AD through the 11th century AD really allowed for the expansion of the Muslim religion. We can talk about the Islamic faith again. It originated in the Arabian Peninsula, and then trade routes through the Red Sea and down along the eastern coast of Africa through a lot of these very key and crucial ports, then also spread over into the Indian Peninsula, South Asia. We can see that there's some of these key ports down along here on the southwest side of India, and then over into Indonesia. We can see there was a significant amount of trade that was taking place between the Arabian Peninsula, the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire over here, and Indonesia in this area. And what this does is we can see that these trade routes also facilitated the expansion of the Muslim faith, of Islam. There were also some trade routes through the southern portion of China. You can see they were incredibly far-reaching, incredibly broad were the trade routes. There was another aspect, too, that was really crucial in this. The Islam, the Islamic religion, the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire, they treated their conquered peoples very, very well. They were attracted to the Islamic culture. Muslim treated their people very well. There were similarities, and they took advantage of those similarities. And it seems a little counterintuitive to us based on the fanatical Muslims that we hear about in the news today, but there was a really high tolerance of non-Muslims to different religions. And so there were a lot of people who were already being persecuted. When the Muslims came in, the invaders, the dominating force came in, they were actually welcomed as liberators, because it was better off to be part of the Muslim empire than it was to be part of these random smaller kingdoms. We can see here, especially in northern Africa, and we're all very familiar with how in the Arabian Peninsula and Iraq and Iran, Pakistan, there are a lot of Muslims there. But we can take a look in Islamic Africa today, northern Africa, where there was a heavy Islamic influence. We can see that most of northern Africa has more than 50% of the people are Muslim, are Islamic. And then as we go a little further south, there's still a heavy influence along these areas. We can also see the influence of the trade routes down in this area. There were a lot of trades from the Arabian Peninsula down into the eastern and the southeastern portion of Africa. And again, that's not from being conquered, that's from the trade routes. A picture that I don't have here, so I'm going to go back up to this one, is the most populous Muslim nation in the world is actually Indonesia. And again, that didn't come from the Indonesians being conquered like North Africa or like the Persian area, Iran and Iraq. This came from trade routes. So trade brought the Islamic religion there, and the people converted, and right now it's the most populous Islamic country in the world. So that gives you a general idea of diffusion, cultural diffusion. Gives us a couple of examples of just Islamic religion and how it diffused across the world that way. I'm going to do another one where we're going to deal with something that is a little bit more near and dear to our heart. How about paper? Okay, paper was used all over the world, and we hear about papyrus or papyri or whatever being used in Egypt, but that really wasn't paper. It was a different type of texture. It was a different type of plant that was used. Really not paper. Also, in Mesoamerica, the Aztecs and the Mayans developed a kind of paper, but it wasn't really paper. It was a type of bark. It wasn't the same type of paper that we know and we use. Wasn't as durable, wasn't as long lasting. The paper that we know originated in China, and they used it discovered it around 500 AD, 600 AD. And around 800 AD, so 7th, 8th, 9th century, if you recall from what we were just talking about, the Muslims expanded and they began to see a lot of invasions over into this area, Pakistan, what is modern-day Pakistan, modern-day Afghanistan. And so there was a little bit of cultural blend over here. And so what happened is paper got picked up by the Muslims and Muslim invaders around 8th century AD. And so from there, it gets picked up, moved over into the Arabian Peninsula. It gets transferred over into North Africa, as well as up here into Turkey, the Iberian Peninsula, all of the regions where the Muslim Empire expanded, traded over into the Indonesian area, and we see paper around 10th, 11th century expanding all the way up into Europe and into Indonesia. From Europe, we see the transfer into America. And from America, what happened there is paper as we know it, the new way that we use it, the durable paper, the type of paper that we now understand was actually the process to develop that kind of paper was developed in Canada, if you can believe that. So that gives us an understanding. Here we are. It starts in China. It gets expanded over here because we have the Islamic Empire, the Muslims, the Ottoman Empire takes over. They begin through trade, through military expansion. It gets expanded out into North Africa, Iberian Peninsula, Middle East, gets picked up into Europe. Europe transfers it over to America. New process for developing paper is in Canada, early part of the 19th century, and we've got paper now all over the world. Everybody uses paper. So let's take a look right here. We've got blue jeans. Blue jeans were invented here in Genoa, Italy. They around 17th century they were used in the industrial for industrial work. Employees would use them. They were very durable. They're very lightweight, something that everybody really liked to use. So we can see the expansion from Genoa. It would go down into lower parts of Italy. They would go through the Mediterranean, through trade there, popped over into France, a little bit into Eastern Europe. And importantly for our little story, it also gets transferred, diffused, if you will, up into Germany. Now from Germany, we're going to see it pop over into the United States. So it comes over, a gentleman named Levi Strauss comes over and he settles in New York. And then a couple of years later, he decides to bounce over 1850s. He bounces over to San Francisco. Now, there are a couple of myths about this. One of the myths is that Levi Strauss really made all his money selling his blue jeans to miners. That's an interesting story. It's a little bit of a myth. I'm sure the miners bought them, but everybody was buying blue jeans, not just miners. Another myth is that the blue jean material was actually made in France or in Italy, and it was shipped over to the United States. Again, another myth. The blue jean material that they were actually selling, blue jean material that was made right here in the United States. But Levi and he had a partner, last name of Davis. Strauss and Davis developed this company. The company does very, very well, as we all know, and blue jeans start getting sold all over the world, and it all began with cultural diffusion right here from Genoa, Italy. So let's do a little recap, kind of go through some of this stuff here. We're going to bounce up to the top. Cultural diffusion. So we've got Islam, great example of this, the spread of Islam through the Muslim caliphs. They were the kings, and they would start in the Arabian Peninsula, expanded a little bit east into the Persian Peninsula, over into modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, over into northern Africa. You begin to expand further by 8th century into the Iberian Peninsula, further over northern Africa, further to the east towards China. Through trade, we see an expansion down through eastern Africa. We see expansion into the Indian Peninsula. We see expansion into Indonesia and even a little bit into China. And that becomes very important because Islam right now, very, very expansive, very, very influential in northern Africa. Also, as I said, very influential in the Middle East and over into Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Now, the reason that ties in and is very important is because take a look at this right over here. Here, paper starts in China. Muslim Empire ties in. Now we've got access to their incredible footprint. Northern Africa, Iberian Peninsula, Middle East, Indonesia. Now not just the Islamic religion, but paper is also culturally diffused. Goes throughout everywhere there. Europe, the United States, new process for developing paper in the 19th century in Canada. Finally, blue jeans, Genoa, Italy, expanded through southern Europe, western Europe, a little bit into eastern Europe, up in northern Europe into Germany. And that's where our good buddy Levi Strauss emigrates from Germany to the United States, comes to New York a couple of years later, over to San Francisco for whatever reason, whether it's miners or selling good quality foreign material or what. Blue jeans really take off, and we see a huge diffusion of blue jeans, their wearing, their use, their popularity throughout the world. So that's it. Now we're going to move on to the next section.